Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 2349. Today, we're going to be talking about the auctions during Car Week in Monterey and Pebble Beach and a whole lot more. Be prepared to be inspired.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. Today I'm in Blenheim, Ontario, Canada, with a very special guest by the name of Thatcher Keast. Thatcher, welcome to Cars Yeah. Do you have any gear, and are you ready to release the clutch?
Absolutely, Mark. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
You bet. You know, we met some time ago, probably during Monterey Car Week, and here we are back talking about this year's events because you guys at RM are going to have some killer cars for sale. I'm going to have to get out my big checkbook, though, to participate. But I always tell people, if you can't buy cars at certain levels, it's always fun to just be a part of it and be there. And before we get into what we're doing here and what we're talking about, and a lot about you, what's one little thing that maybe people don't know about you, Thatcher?
Something that's fun about me that, is not necessarily a business world is I'm quite the avid Lego collector and sneaker collector.
Oh my gosh.
I find in my free time, my brain's always going 100 miles an hour in the auction world. And to sit down and build something or learn about a new kind of collector hobby has always been fascinating to me. So yeah, Legos and sneakers.
There's a friend of mine up here in the Pacific Northwest. He's been on the show. He is a Lego maniac. He built a house that has his own Lego room in it, and it's no little room. It's a big room, and this is before he even had kids. So you and he would get along well. He finds it very therapeutic, and I understand why.
Yeah, so do I. It completely takes your brain off of whatever you're stressed about. So that's why I do it. And I like constructing things, so it's fun to see a pile of parts become something cool.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, we still have all the Legos that my son played with in our home, saving those for when the grandkids come along and they can come over and play with those. But giant bins full of those things. I mean, thousands and thousands. Yeah. And I have to admit, every once in a while, I look at them and go, maybe I should get that down and have a little fun and just get away from everything. So
yeah, it's good for you.
I might take your lead. And sneakers is another interesting thing. You scroll through Instagram and they send you things that are interesting. For some reason, all of a sudden, I'm getting all these sneaker Instagram videos. And I'm amazed at what sneakers, especially like Air Jordans, sell for. Talk about the auction world. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. Once our partnership with Sotheby's, really bloomed, I took a liking to the lifestyle department. And I started to learn about all the ins and outs of sneakers and what makes a certain pair more valuable than the others, even though they might look the same. Kind of how I feel about Porsches. It's like, why is that one $1.5 million and that one's only $300? So it's same thing with sneakers. They're limited editions. There's certain collaborations. There's all kinds of things, and it's a really cool world to be involved in. I was involved with the first pair of sneakers to sell for over $1 million.
What? We
had our auction at the MGM Hotel a couple years ago in Las Vegas, and they sold the first pair of Air Jordan airships. So before they were Air Jordans, they were called airships, and they were the very first pair that he wore. And there was this, I believe it was $1.2 or $3 million they sold for. It was unbelievable.
Oh my God! Whoa!
Really, really, really cool experience to see that happen. And we had some cars in the sale too.
Well, yeah, cars. Well, I think I'm with you. I'll take Porsches over sneakers, but just when I thought, well, maybe sneakers are an affordable thing to collect versus Porsches, but hearing that, I don't know. It's kind of like Rolex watches and some of these watch collectors. Same thing. I just, there's a place to collect everything for everybody in the world. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in RM in a minute. Let me give you an introduction here. Thatcher Keast is the consignment department manager and auction coordinator at RM Sotheby's, where he oversees consignments and the logistics of making an auction come to life. He began working in the automotive industry at the age of 14 when he started his own automotive detailing business in Salina, Kansas. You and I have something in common there. At that age is when I started my detailing business. He soon found a mentor in a local car collector and became responsible for maintaining that gentleman's diverse collection of automobiles. It included Shelbys, Porsches, and brass era Rolls-Royces, and in 2022, he attended the Worldwide College of Auctioneering, where he gained the skills needed to sell cars crossing the block at auctions. He's now a licensed auctioneer, a great addition to the RM Sotheby's roster. We'll be back in just a moment, so get your bidder cards out. We're going to have some fun today, but first, a word from our sponsors. They make that bidding possible here, so give them a little love as well, and we'll be right back. For several years now, you've heard me talk about Linkage Magazine. I've been a subscriber since the start. Their talented and creative team brings you a spectacular publication and website that shares the automotive passion from a worldwide perspective. Linkage is about driving, restoring, collecting, and first-hand experience at collector car auctions and more. They bring you real-world values plus rational, experienced opinions on the current markets. They cover the automotive world and the people who share our passions. And Linkage Magazine has grown, mailing you 6 issues annually. Join me on this journey with Linkage. They're geared for the automotive life. You can subscribe at linkagemag.com. Years ago, when it was time to renew my collector car insurance policy, my carrier's rates went up. Way up, but my usage was the same and I never made a claim. I didn't even have a ticket. So what's with that? So I turned to American Collectors Insurance. Has your collector car insurance recently raised your rates for no good reason? Tired of paying an annual membership fee? Then it's time to look around and call American Collectors Insurance. I shopped around, I asked friends for recommendations, and found a winner that I can trust. And boy, I'm glad I did. I saved hundreds of dollars every year and slept better at night knowing my baby was properly insured. American Collectors Insurance have been protecting vehicles since 1976. They provided me with an agreed value insurance policy backed by their history of taking great care of their clients. What could be better than that? So give them a call and ask for a quote today. 866-ACI-YEAH. That's 866-224-9324. And protect the ones you love like I did with American Collectors Insurance. Classic car insurance designed by collectors for collectors. Did you know that Cars Yeah! Is in the top 1% of all podcasts based on listenership, according to Libsyn, the premier RSS feed for podcasts in the United States? That's right. Plus, DuPont Registry recommended Cars Yeah! Is one of their top 10 car podcasts for you to enjoy. Cars Yeah! Has experienced tremendous growth, plus your ads are evergreen, meaning they never go away. And more listeners find Cars Yeah! Every day for their daily dose of automotive inspiration. Do you want to expose your brand to a highly targeted list of automotive enthusiasts in a very unique and very personal way? Well, I can help you. Contact me, Mark Green, at mark@carsyeah.com or through the website at carsyeah.com today to learn more. So Thatcher, we are back. So I want to go back in time a little bit because I mentioned you and I have something in common, starting a business at a young age. I think you probably discovered, like I did, it taught you all sorts of things that you carried forward into your life at this point, right?
Oh, absolutely. Starting my own business, and I had probably around 55 to 60 clients that I would look after from month to month. I'd get them on a regimented program from, every 3 weeks, and they just drop their car off. And I had to be responsible to be there for them when they were available, and most importantly, do a good job. That's not something that you can kind of just do a little bit of and they're like, oh, that's not good. It has to be good every time. So it taught me a really good work ethic as well.
I think it was a wonderful thing. Plus, you had a lot more money in your pocket as a young kid than most of my peers because you make more money. I had a couple of clients that I found out that there was all this fishing fleet. I lived in San Diego, and these fishermen made a lot of money, and they'd go out fishing, and their wives would be home. And I actually had my own set of keys to many cars. I would just go over to their house, pick up their car on a Saturday morning, drive it home. I got to drive Porsches and Mercedes, Porsche Turbos, and all these, even a couple Ferraris. And so, it was a pretty cool deal. Once I turned 16, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it was the satisfaction of it. Taking something dirty and making it perfect. I could do that every day of my life.
Now, this job that you got as we move forward with a gentleman who had a collection, my understanding is that really helped you start to acquire knowledge about cars. And was that kind of the first inklings of working in the automotive business as you got older?
Yeah. So as I started my business, I was, doing like my friend's mom's minivans, soccer vans, and, my dad's friends, traveling salesman cars that were just trashed. And as I worked through that, I met more people, and I came across this gentleman. His name's Roger Morrison, and he's the main reason of how I got to where I am today. I did not know of his car collection at the time, and he employed me to clean one of his daily driver cars, which was a Mercedes S550 at the time, and that was the coolest thing in the world to me. I think it was an S550 or AMG of some kind. I can't remember exactly, but he gave me a chance to clean it, and I was thrilled. And I tried to do the absolute best job I could. And then once I did it another time, he said, "Meet me at this address. I want to show you some things." And that turned out to be his car building, which I had no idea what was in that building. I drove by it 1,000 times in my life in Salina. From there, I started working for him, and I would take care of his entire collection, which at the time was right around 30 cars. So that kind of put my detailing business aside. Not away, but just not as much as it was, because that's a full-time job. That's how I got into the classic car world, was by detailing soccer mom minivans to polishing the brass tubing on a 1912 Rolls Royce.
Wow, what an opportunity. Well, I was with you. At first, I did a lot of everything cars, and then as I got more and more clients, I could be more picky. And I remember a lady calling me once and wanting me to do, I'm a lot older than you, so they didn't even have minivans back then, but wanted me to do her station wagon or something. And I said, I don't do domestic cars anymore. I only do European sports cars. And I remember she said, "What?" And I said, she goes, this is when I was about 17. She goes, "You're just a teenager. What do you mean?" And I said, "I only do cars I like that are fun, and station wagons aren't that much fun to clean." So yeah, a bit of it. But my dad gave me the idea. He said, "Well, why don't you hire some workers? They can do the cars you don't like to do and start a business that way." And that's when I learned about the joys, and maybe not the joys, of having employees.
Yeah. I never went down the employee road for that reason.
Yeah, well, it didn't last very long. And plus, they didn't do the passion wasn't there. I loved cleaning cars. I still like cleaning cars.
So do I.
Yeah.
So do I. That's my weekend job.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I keep my wife's car clean, and she keeps the laundry done. That's a deal we made 39 years ago when we got married.
That's a good deal.
Yeah, it worked out pretty well. So let's move forward as you decided to go to an auction university, if you will. I knew I didn't know they existed way back. So tell me about that experience, because you can go to school to learn to be an auctioneer?
Yeah, absolutely. It's called the Worldwide College of Auctioneering. It's in Des Moines, Iowa, and it was incredibly difficult than what I had expected in my head. I've always wanted to be an auctioneer. One of my friends and role models is Max Girardo. He was our auctioneer years ago, and he was incredible. I remember being in college before I had the job and watching these auctions on like Friday and Saturday nights when my friends were going out to the bars. I was like, "Oh no, RM's having an auction tonight. I want to watch it."
Yeah. And
I always set a goal for myself to hopefully someday be the auctioneer at RM. I'm still working on it, and that's a long process. But yeah, I remember watching him in the school. For some reason, I thought it would be like, all right, we're going to teach you how to sell a car. And it's not that. You learn how to sell cattle. You learn how to sell real estate. You learn how to sell cars. You learn how to sell guns. Like, all different varieties of auctioneer traits are taught to you at the school. And in order to graduate, you have to master each one. And it's all different. And you have to learn how to be a bid spotter. You learn how to clerk. You learn how the auction business works in itself. And the most important part of the school is learning auction law. And you have to take a test at the end of the school. And if you don't pass, you don't pass. And see you next year.
So it's not just how to talk fast.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the main components. But there's a lot more to it than just learning how to talk fast. You have to learn how to communicate by talking fast. That's what the whole system is about.
Yeah, auctions are interesting. My wife and daughter came with my son and I to Pebble Beach Car Week, and they weren't really into cars. So it was more like, well, they could go shopping and do spas. But I said, why don't we go to an auction tonight? And we went to an auction, and I couldn't get them to go. I had to get up early the next morning. And, I said, we need to go back to the hotel. Oh, we don't want to leave. This is exciting. I always tell people, if you've never been to a live auction, you have to go. And even if you aren't going to bid on anything, it's just fun and exciting to be there. And is that part of the auction business in your mind? It's I would say lathering up the audience, but getting the audience excited about what's coming. Is that one of the key components? And how do you learn that? Is it just your passion coming through?
Yeah, it has a lot to do with passion, and it's funny you say that because you must have had a really good auctioneer to keep people entertained. That's one of the most important things. So you have to, if you lose your audience's attention, they're not going to sell anything. You have to be a showman. You have to be excited. You can't ever seem tired. You have to put on a performance. It's not just getting up there and selling someone's property. They're trusting you to do a good job with it and to get people excited about what they are selling, because the auctioneer doesn't own any of the stuff. You're selling other people's property, and you have to be excited about that, because if you're not, then you're not going to make any money, and then you're going to have a disappointed seller. So none of that makes sense unless you're an enthusiastic, passionate person about what you're selling.
Yeah, let's talk a bit about RM Sotheby's, because this is a brand name that's been around. Sotheby's, of course, tied to RM, has been around. Sotheby's been around forever. And I think sometimes people they think they're going to RM Sotheby's website, and then they see Sotheby's and they go, wait a minute, there's all sorts of things being sold. But RM's in particular, can you talk a little bit about the history of RM Sotheby's and why you chose that as the company to be a part of?
Yeah. I don't know if I would say I chose to be a part of the company. I was lucky to be able to be included in the company.
I got you.
You know, it's a difficult world to find yourself in. A lot of that has to do with, again, Roger, who I worked for, who bought and sold cars from Rob, many, many years ago. And I was always intrigued by it. It's kind of funny. I would watch these auctions as, when I was younger, in my teenage years, and I always dreamt about working here. And then I met a person who knew somebody here, and then therefore the connection was made, and I stayed on top of the person that I knew here and asked for internships, and I never got one. And are you hiring? No, we're not. It took a long time and persistence to get to where I am within the company.
Well, I think you've got to gain a massive amount of knowledge, but you touched on the other part of it in my mind. You got to be passionate about what you're doing. And it really comes through when you look at a company that has a legacy that RM has. All the people I've met there, and I met so many wonderful people as a part of RM, including yourself, that you can tell these people are really into it. And I think in the car world, those of us who are car people can sniff out a non-car person really fast. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
It's like when you go to a car dealership to buy a car and you can tell the guy just isn't behind the car. In fact, these days, most of us who are car people know more about the cars than the salespeople, just because of the massive amount of information out there. But this must have been pretty fun for you. So as you worked through the ranks, for somebody that's listening out there would love to be a part of a company like this or be in the auction world, what are the steps you have to go through to get to where you've gotten?
Well, I'll give you a quick summary of my kind of time here. It's been 7-8 years I've been here now. I started down in Stuart, Florida, and the first auction I worked, I was doing check-in. I was pushing cars across the block. I was not in communication with any clients at all. I was just pushing cars and parking cars where they needed to be. I did that for a couple years, not making very much money, but I loved doing it. It was a passion of mine. I loved being around the cars and the auction life. It's intoxicating. Like once you finish an auction, you're like, all right, when's the next one? So I started pushing cars, and then I moved into a car specialist role, which is consigning cars to auction. And I've done that. I did that for 4 or 5 years, 3 to 4 years, I think. And then I got moved. I kind of moved over into more of a management side and running an auction itself. And now I'm to where I am now with the coordination and managing the consignment department with Gord. So it's been, it's kind of like the classic story of I started sweeping floors and now I'm the president of the company. Well, I started pushing cars, and now I'm helping these auctions actually come to life and happen.
Yeah. Well, there it goes back to the professionalism of this business and how important it is. And again, you said it well. You're dealing with people's fortunes, if you will. And These days, we're starting to see, and I'm going to touch on this next, some collections from older people who are either passed away or they're ready to sell their cars because they're at a point in life where they need to go, I don't want to leave all this burden to my family. It's been my passion. And so that's really important to people, and they don't want to entrust these things to just anybody. We've all had bad experiences buying and selling cars, probably, if you bought more than one or two cars. So let's talk a little bit about what's coming up during Monterey. This is August 17th, 18th, and 19th during, of course, Car Week. Your event is again going to be held at Monterey Conference Center, which is a great place, great venue for you guys. It's very professional. I like the ambiance. I like the feeling of it. Let's start with an estate, because I touched on that. Terrence Adderley, quite an amazing collection of cars are going to be sold. Can you touch on a little bit about this collection of cars and maybe pick one that if you could take it home, which one it would be?
Yeah, the Adderley estate is a beautiful, beautiful collection of cars. Unfortunately, he has passed away, and we are working on liquidating the estate for the family, and it's been a very long process. One of my colleagues, Jake, is the one handling that estate, and every time these cars come up again, or every time they call us to sell some more cars, we're always very excited. They're always, top-notch restored cars. They've been stored in a beautiful building. They've never been outside in the rain. They're just incredible assets to add to any collection. Like the fact that these cars have the Terrence E. Adderley name attached to them adds value in itself. Probably the car out of this grouping that I like the most is the DV32, the Stutz. There's two DV32s, I believe. Yeah. So there's a 32, which is kind of gray, and then there's the yellowish green tan combination. Yeah, it's the Victoria by Rolston, the convertible. We had that car up here at RM just a couple weeks ago, getting it ready for auction, kind of servicing it and getting it ready to go. For some reason, that car just struck me. The lines of it, I walked around it, the way it sounds when it's running, and the overall condition of it, it's unbelievable.
I love it. And for you, you're a younger guy. Is there a period of car that really touches your fancy, if you will, that you like to go to? Or are you surprised when you like a car like an old Stutz and you go, wow, I'm kind of surprised I like that?
Well, I was fortunate at a young age to be exposed to pre-war cars. Roger he had a 1912 Ghost, he had a 24 Ghost, he has a Bentley, a super early Bentley. He had several come through the collection when I was there, so I got to understand and really appreciate the beauty and mechanical engineering of these cars, which is why I like them. And here at RM, we get a lot of pre-war stuff. And every time you get in a Duesenberg, which I know most people don't, and that sounds ridiculous saying that,
yeah.
But every time I get into one, I just think of how incredible the car itself is. There's no computers in it. There's nothing telling you that your tire's flat. There's nothing beeping at you. There's no sound system. It's just a pure mechanical device that is artistically brilliant. And that's what I appreciate the most about them.
It's like a fine mechanical watch versus a digital watch or something, or a Apple phone or Apple Watch or whatever it is. I mean, there's all this handmade elements of it. And I always tell people that's the other fun part of going to auctions is you get to learn about these cars because you always have people there that they can come up and ask questions. And it's almost better than going to a car show in many cases because the variety and the caliber of cars is so high. There's another interesting group of cars that you're selling, what you call the ultimate barn find.
Yes.
A couple Ferraris found in a barn that kind of blew down. Now, I remember when that happened and there was pictures all over the internet of that collection, and now the collection's being sold. So tell us a little bit about this really unique collection of Ferraris. It's really different than the Adderley type cars, right?
Yes. Yeah, the Lost and Found collection is actually my personal project for Monterey this year. I've been looking after it since we started negotiating with the guy who owns it. It's a really cool thing, Mark, to be honest. I remember the first time I went down and saw the cars in the building that they're in, like I was just at a loss for words. There's 330 GTSs in there, there's Testarossas, there's 275 6-carb alloy car. There's a 500 Mondial chassis in there. It's unbelievable to see them in this state. They're untouched. They're unrestored. They've had a barn fall on them. They've been moved. And it's when we bring these cars out to the public and you see the way that we're going to display them, I'm hoping it breaks the car world internet.
Well, I think it will. But what's fun about it for me is everyone thinks, oh, every car that could be found could be found. There's no more barn finds. And then something like this happens. And you go, what? And
exactly.
It makes you scratch your head going, why? Why did somebody... we know why they would have all the cars, because they had the means and they collected them. But why would they have been in that situation? And I mean, there's so many stories, right? That's the fun part.
Yeah, when I spoke, I asked the owner that. I said, why'd you leave them in this condition? Like, why this way? And he said, his answer was, these are like children to me. I've owned them for 30 to 40 years, and it's hard to let your children go away. And so I didn't necessarily have the means or the desire to restore them, but I still want to keep them. I said, I understand. I understand.
That's why sometimes when people see a car out in a field on a farm and they're traveling and they stop and knock on the door and the guy goes, nah, I don't want to sell that. You go,
yeah.
But it's just rotting in the field. Yeah, but I've had that forever. That was my dad's car, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, but I could take it and baby it. Yeah, but it's not yours. It's mine. So,
not for sale.
So go away. Yeah, it's hard for some of us car people to comprehend it, but I understand. I think, I know a guy that works at RM that collects sneakers and Legos, so he probably doesn't want to let them go either. So there you go. Another interesting collection or car, Steve McQueen. You've got a car that belonged to him. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's kind of a movie poster car.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. I mean, it really is. Yeah, I mean, anything with the Steve McQueen name attached to it, the King of Cool, is automatically 50% cooler than it already is. And a 275 GTB is already pretty dang cool. So to have the King of Cool 275 in your collection, that opportunity might happen once every 30 to 50 years.
Right. Yeah.
That's a pretty special piece of automotive history.
And my understanding is he bought that car new.
Yeah, he bought this car new in 1967. So he's, not only did he want this car, he thought it was cool. And for him to think it's cool means something about this car is special. And, truly it is one of the most beautiful front engine Ferraris ever made. It's just timeless.
Yeah, pretty darn cool. Well, we could talk forever about the many, many cars coming to auction, but I'll encourage you folks to go to the RM Sotheby's website. I'll put links to it on Thatcher show notes page. You can go and check out all the cars that are going to be available. But better yet, get yourself down to Monterey in August 17th, 18th, and 19th, and participate and be there to see some of these wonderful cars. But we got to talk a little bit about your car passion here, Thatcher, because I had Gord on the show a few weeks ago. He had been on the show before, so I was kind of picking my questions and modifying them a bit to the car collection. But you're a first-time guest here, so I want to ask you first and foremost this. When you look at your special cars you've had in your life, is there one car that stands out?
Not really that I've owned, but there's a couple cars in mind. One of them not being a car at all. Well, I grew up in western Kansas with, my parents were both farmers. So I grew up as a kid always going out to the farm and kind of, working through wheat harvests and, taking care of cattle and stuff like that. So there's this I don't know the exact year, but it's a early 1980s GMC wheat truck.
Okay.
And it was this big old beat up thing. And the reason it's special to me is because I'll never forget my grandfather taught me how to drive a manual transmission in it. And I remember, I'll never forget that. And the difference between having the wheat truck loaded and when it was empty and driving it, I learned all of that. Never forget that piece of machinery that, to anybody else is just an old work truck. That's a special truck to me.
The great thing about cars is the story behind cars and the experiences and the emotion that it brings back. And to have that kind of a history with that vehicle as a kid and your grandfather, pretty darn special. But I think you're the first one to mention the 1980s GMC wheat truck.
I believe that I have. There's one other car I kind of want to talk about. It was before I was really into the car world. I was probably, I was at least 16 because I was driving. And I had a date to go to prom. I didn't have a car, so I went. I played golf as a kid, and I was friends with the guy that owned our local Ford dealership. So I went out there and I asked him, like, can I borrow one of your used Mustangs for prom? And he said, do you know how to drive a manual transmission? And I hadn't done it in a long, long time. And I said, yeah, absolutely I do. And I got in this 2006 Mustang, and I somehow got it home. And I'll never forget it. My mom got in it, and I didn't know that my mom could drive a manual transmission, and she ripped the daylights out of this Mustang, and I was blown away by it. So then further after my grandfather taught me, my mom helped refine my skills on learning how to drive a manual transmission. So, the 1980s GMC wheat truck and a 2006 Ford Mustang, completely opposite things, but two very special cars in my life.
Well, that's a pretty cool story. You brought back a memory because my senior prom, my mom had a friend who had just bought one of the first 924s. Remember that Porsche 924s that came out, which in my mind wasn't a 911, so it was kind of this goofy thing, but he offered to let me drive that car to prom. And I grew up in Southern California, and I lived in La Jolla, but our prom was over on Coronado Island at the Hotel Del, cool. Which is a beautiful place. And so I got to drive my date all the way from La Jolla over the bridge, downtown San Diego, and then into Coronado. And I felt like I was kind of a king driving a new Porsche over to prom. So, of course, the whole time I was petrified something might happen to it too. So when I pulled up, the valets came and I said, "Could you park that somewhere nice for me?" And the guy was like, "No, this kid driving a Porsche, gee whiz." I go, "It's not mine. It's a loaner." And he's like, "Okay." So they parked it right in front. So I thought that was pretty nice of them. So I'm a bit of a car psychologist here, Thatcher, and I know you've listened to Cars Yeah, so you know where we're going here.
Yep.
If you were reincarnated as a vehicle, what would you be and why?
That's an easy question for me. It's this original, unrestored 65 Shelby GT350.
Okay, I got to ask why.
With all the patina, no new seats, the original interior, just the way it came out of LAX, just the way it was. The reason for that is I feel that my family can relate to the way that car was created. And my family were farmers. We never had piles of money. You had to work every day of your life so you could eat the next day. And I see a lot of that in the 65 Shelby, and because of how Carroll built his company and what he had to go through to even make that car exist, that was his blood, sweat, and tears in that. And I take a lot of pride in my family and coming from that kind of background, and someday I hope to have one for that very reason.
Well, I love the story. My father grew up on a farm in Texas, super hardworking. I understand all of that. I often say that's where I got my work ethic because I remember my grandfather coming to visit us once, driving all the way from Texas to San Diego, California. And about 3 days in, he said, "Well, we got to go home." I'm like, "You just got here." He said, "Mark, the cows don't go on vacation. I got to get back to the cows," because he had wheat and I understand. And I got to visit his farm a few times, not as many times as I'd hoped, but I think I could have learned a lot more from him. I just never got to know him. He was just too far away. But that would be great. I had a 66 fastback that had been built into a clone GT350. And I know in your auction world, you might go, "Hey, a clone," but this car was done really, really nice. And I tell you, I've had lots of cars, mostly European cars. That car was fun. I drove that to work every day for about 3 years, and everybody loves those cars. Thumbs up everywhere. Yeah. So I hope you do get your GT350 someday. I have a feeling that's going to happen. Is there a great book you'd like to share?
I'm not much of a big reader, but I have read a book and
well, that's good to know.
I've read a book or two. The one that kind of stuck out to me, I read Shoe Dog there's a story about Phil Knight and Nike.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's a cool, motivating, interesting book.
Yeah, I love that book. Yeah, incredible. I mean, people look at Nike and they go, "Oh, just big, giant, successful company." They have no idea. Kind of like Ralph Lauren, what he went through to make his company what it was, selling ties out of the back of a car, going into Macy's.
Selling running shoes to marathon runners in the trunk of his car. And now it's $1 billion business.
Did you see the movie about how they did the deal with Jordan?
No, I have not seen that yet, but I've had a lot of friends tell me, like, "Dude, you got to go see that. It's good."
I was in Arizona visiting my grandson, and we watched it one night, my brother-in-law and I, and fascinating story about, talk about taking massive risk. At the time, it seems like it was a brilliant idea, right? But massive risk for that company.
Putting all of the eggs in one basket is the definition of that story.
But if you're going to put it in a basket, put it in Michael Jordan's basket. But again, nobody he wasn't even playing that much. Nobody really even knew what he would have become. But I don't want to give anything away. Just go watch the movie. You'll be amazed at kind of the ending and how it all came together. So let's go on the ultimate drive, Thatcher. I'm an enabler. I get out the big Cars Yeah checkbook. I'll park anything in your driveway. You can take it anywhere. And you can take anybody with you, even somebody who's no longer with us. So what does the ultimate drive look like for a guy who's been around some ultimate cars?
It's a pretty simple answer for me. It's not really a specific person that I would take. It'd be the group of my closest friends.
Oh, nice.
And the reason I say that is because a lot of my friends know what I do, but they don't really know what I do. They know that I sell old cars and I work for an auction company, but they don't know that I get to experience what these $1 million cars are truly like to drive. So I would like to take, 3 of my best friends for a drive in a 289 Cobra, because it's the most visceral driver's car there is, in my opinion. I know a lot of people will disagree, and there'll be a lot of people that do agree.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that sounds and requires your attention to driving like a 289. And I don't really know if I would talk to them. I would just kind of try to scare them a little bit and get them to understand what these machines are capable of doing, even though they're from the 60s.
Right. Yeah. Well, they wouldn't be able to hear you if you were talking anyway.
No. There's nothing today that no modern car that can compare to that. There just isn't.
Yeah, I've only been able to drive some of the many really nicely built replicas, like the Superformance replica of those cars. But I have been able to go for a ride as a passenger in a couple real ones. And compared to the 427, I like the 289 better, quite honestly.
289 is more fun, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I can see those cars can be, if put in the wrong hands, can be very, very dangerous and dicey cars. They have a lot of respect. When you think about folks racing those things back in the day, oh my gosh. I mean, it's like jumping on the back of a wild bucking bronco.
That's exactly right. And I want to show that to as many people as I can.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You can park that next to your GT350. I think those will look pretty nice.
The ultimate garage for me.
The ultimate garage, for sure. You have taken us on a wonderful trip today, Thatcher, and I want to thank you for spending some time with me. I'm glad we're finally able to get together on a Cars Yeah. And I want to do a shout out to your colleagues, Ethan and Kate. They're the ones that got you on the show here today. So thank you, you too. And again, if you listeners missed my talk with Gord, go back. He was a couple weeks ago. You'll find him in the Cars Yeah Alumni Archives. Before I let you go today, could you share some parting thoughts, some words of wisdom with us?
I kind of put a lot of thought into that. It's kind of a deep thing, but my grandfather always taught me this. He told me one time, we all go through difficult things in our life, and it's important to approach them with the mindset of the devil stands behind you. So I always use that to face my fears head on. Whether that's getting ready to go on stage at an auction, that's a scary thing. Being in front of a room of 3,000 people and getting ready to sell somebody else's property, that's a scary thing. Tell that, stand behind me. I'm going to face this head on. And it's important to understand that the people in your life that are around you support you. People do change, and if things are worth fighting for, they're worth fighting for.
Great lessons. Again, your grandfather sounds like an awesome guy. That's very, very cool. How can people learn more about RM Sotheby's and the upcoming, not only the auctions taking place in Monterey, August 17th, 18th, and 19th, but you've also got a lot of other auctions happening as well. Oh gosh,
our calendar at the end of the year is blowing up. There's, we've got Monterey in August, we've got St. Moritz in September, we've got Hershey in October, we've got London in November, and we're going to be having an announcement here in a couple weeks about 2 more auctions that we're adding. So it's on and on. The best way to keep up to date is just check out our website, rmsotheby's.com.
Definitely. I'd encourage you listeners to go there. You can sign up to receive notifications from them so that you can get teased and taunted by all the many auctions they're having. Your frequent flyer miles must be overloaded with all the travel you get to do. But I mean, you think back to your life of being around cars, playing with cars as a kid, and now you get to travel all over the world, not only to see all these wonderful cars, but meet all the wonderful people associated with them. I would think that's the best part of what you do.
It is, and that's the part I'm most grateful for, are the people. Because once you can get into the industry, it takes care of you. It's a very special place to be in a professional life. It's very cool. I'm very grateful for it.
Well, congratulations to where you've come and where you're going. Thanks for being so generous today, Thatcher, with your time and your expertise. So glad we were able to get together. Until you and I talk again, I'll see you down the road, hopefully at an RM Sotheby's auction.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome. If you're listening to this program, there's a pretty good chance you believe what I believe, that the collector vehicles we love are more than just a means of getting from one place to the other. They're a part of our culture, our identity, and as a people, they bring us together at vintage races, classic car auctions, and 1,000-mile rallies. That's why I support the RPM Foundation, which exists to ensure that the critical skills necessary to preserve and restore these important vehicles aren't lost to time. RPM stands for Restoration, Preservation, and Mentorship, and their goal is to inspire the next generation of vehicle restoration professionals through its outreach programs. And they include Shop Hop, Off to the Races, the RPM Future Class, and many others. These programs engage talented young people across the country and connect them with mentors and a variety of opportunities in the industry. For more information on how the RPM Foundation is driving the future of collector vehicles skilled trade, visit rpm.foundation today.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.